Now this here, look at this. Full page ad, the TPPA walk away. This has been a huge issue around the country, so I want to ask about this. It's the world's largest free trade deal. Jan Logie, what do you think about it? Do you think it adds anything to New Zealand?
No, the Green Party's with Periwipu and a whole lot of other New Zealanders on this one, and we think we should walk away.
Is any free trade agreement bad in terms of the Greens?
The Greens aren't opposed to trade, but this deal is about a whole lot more than trade.
Because you
sound
sound opposed to trade.
Well, no, we've had a real focus on fair trade and developing relationships around the country because we know our economy needs exports. We're not stupid. But it's about doing it ethically. And this deal compromises our sovereignty, it compromises our medicines, it compromises the Treaty of Waitangi from the information leaked today, and it opens us up to being sued by massive corporates in Australia.
Let's ask Chris Bishop, is this the, is this the case of loss of sovereignty? What happens, for example, if companies like, I don't know, Philip Morris, would they be able to sue us if they introduce plain packaging, if we introduce plain packaging?
Well, the government's made it clear that we will preserve the ability for the government to regulate in the public interest. So something like plain packaging, for example, the government would be able to implement it. The real question around the TPP is, do we want to be part of the world's biggest trade area, with something like 40% of the world's trade? If New Zealand can be part of that and get increased exports in dairy, not just dairy, but also our wine industry, red meat, a whole bunch of other sectors, I think we want to be part of that. The question is whether or not the benefits outweigh the costs.
So far, though, you've got to admit, Chris Bishop, it looks like a very bad deal, doesn't it? So far,
but we don't know what's in the deal. So there's a lot of.
That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
Well, the reality is with a trade deal, and this has been true under successive National and Labor governments, you don't go into a poker game with your cards laid out on the table so people know what you're saying.
That's not strictly true. There have been other trade deals, I think 5 Jane Kelsey quoted.
Well, she's not with respect and authority on stuff like this.
She's actually quite a recognised academic
I've got
in
some
this
views on
area.
that. I've been involved in a trade deal, did quite a lot of work on the China deal, and we did a lot of work working with communities in New Zealand to brief them in on what was in it. And that was an important part of socialising that agreement. But in this one, the New Zealand government has given to the Americans and given to the Japanese a copy of our baselines, but won't give it to the New Zealand people, and that's just wrong.
It is wrong.
Chris?
Well, that's not true.
Well, John Key said it was true. I believe John
Under the
Key.
China Free Trade Agreement, which, by the way, the Greens opposed, that was negotiated by Labor and supported by National, it was conducted in exactly the same way the TPP is being conducted.
True.
It is true.
Just not true.
It is true.
Your MPs at the time knew those that wanted to knew the details over a period of about 4 years, and that has not been the case under this agreement.
Well, I just want to ask you, Trevor, what is the one thing, because the 2008 free trade agreement with China, you've got to agree that it's now worth billions of dollars, 12 billion compared to, so it's worked well, some people say, for Aotearoa. What is the sticking point for you about the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
I think there are a number of them. One is the ability of New Zealand to regulate in its own interests. The foreign ownership of land is an example. Plain packaging is another example.
So you don't agree with Chris about plain packaging?
No, not at all. We don't have legislation in place now that protects us. We've got a bill which is sitting in the Parliament which would do it, but the National Party has refused to pass it.
Well, it's just worth pointing out.
Just
worth pointing out that the China Free Trade Agreement and the Korean Free Trade Agreement, which was supported by the Labor Party, contains mechanisms called investor-state dispute mechanisms. Yeah. These are not new inventions. They haven't ever been used in New Zealand, and I expect they won't.
But have you read them?
Yeah, I've read them, yeah.
Both of them? And what's the difference between them?
Between the Korean one?
China and the Korean one?
Functionally, there is no difference between them.
There is a significant difference between them. The ability to sue New Zealand is much wider in the Korean one than in the China one.
No,
in the China one,
that's not right.
Well, Chris, you clearly have not got across the detail.
All right, okay. I want to sort of come back to Jan Logie. In terms of the transparency, the investor dispute, Chris is right to a certain extent that this has been around way before the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's in other trade agreements, so it's not unique to the TPP.
This deal isn't a normal trade deal.
Is it not?
Goes much beyond that. And we've seen that in the material leak today, which to me was really shocking to find out that the New Zealand government has been lobbying against provisions to protect traditional Indigenous knowledge and intellectual property, which I find, considering we have a treaty in this country to protect Indigenous rights, absolutely shocking. There are other measures in there that put our healthcare system at threat, and I do think that we do have this bill in front of the House around plain packaging and tobacco, and it's not in front of the House because of what's happening in Australia. The Australian government has already spent over $50 million, and they haven't even got to the hearing yet.
All right, just hold there. I want to go to the audience and then come back to you guys.
Well, there's actually a familiar face in the crowd. It's always nice to welcome back MPs, past and present. And Heather Roy, former ACT MP, hello.
Hello, Damien. Nice to be here.
You were always a very welcome guest on Backbenches. I spotted you in the crowd here. Thought I'd say, in America, Republicans, Democrats, they're not even sort of evenly split over the TPP. There's a lot of division there. What's your take on it?
Oh, well, I think it's got a huge benefit, the potential for huge benefit for New Zealand, and I think that Chris is right. We do want to be part of it.
What about some of these fishhooks, these things that we might be giving up? The ability for corporations to sue us, extension of patents under for pharmaceuticals, more expensive drugs, that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Look, there's been a lot of misinformation about a lot of those things. There's always fishhooks in trade. That's exactly what trade is. It's about giving and taking some things, but trying to get something that's very positive for the country overall. I do think that we should be part of it. I think that...
At any cost?
No, not at any cost, and we saw at the weekend where everybody thought that it was a done deal, that our government did actually dig in over dairy, and good on them.
Just finally, the transparency, the lack of transparency, that we don't get to see what's in there as the public. It gets signed by Cabinet, that's all. Does that sit well with you?
I think that's part of trade. Chris talked about the fact that you don't want to lay all your cards down before you start on the process, or else you put yourself in a very weak position. It's actually the start of the process once the signing's done. There's enabling legislation that has to go through Parliament. Select committees will look at these things. The public will still get their chance to have a say.
Well, thank you, Heather, for your time. Nice to see you again. Cheers.
Very good. Good to see you, Heather Roy. Now, just around the panel, very, very briefly, I want to go around and ask, will this deal be signed? Will it come to pass? Trevor Mallard.
I'm certain that the National Party will sell us out, yes.
Chris Bishop.
I hope that a deal can be put together that's in New Zealand's interests, and if it's not in New Zealand's interests, New Zealand won't be signing it.
All right, Jan Logie.
It'd be nice to be able to trust that, wouldn't it? I'm not actually sure that the countries involved are going to sign up.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's going to be about us, though.
What do you think on Twitter, at Backbenches TV? Stay with us, some big guests coming up, including a singer who has sung at over 10 Bleeders Low Cups. That's soon.